Welcome back to the Boardman Black and Gold podcast with Zane and David. And today, we've got a very special episode, an episode that's we've never really done before, but we told you that this offseason was going to have a lot of fun stuff going on. And what better way to kick off this fun offseason, hopefully, than to talk about our history as Steelers fans, and more specifically, games that we have attended. So today, what David and I are going to do is we're going to rank every single Steelers game that we have attended in person. And we're going to go through from the worst to the best, and we're going to relive all the memories that we had, get some kind of insider information. You know, you watch on TV, it's one thing, but when you're actually at the game, it's just a completely different ballgame. And I know David's got some really special games that he's been to, and I think we've heard them over the course of this podcast. But this is our time to just really talk about the games that we've been to and the cool things that we experienced at these games. So, David, you want to kind of explain how we're going to do this?
Yeah, absolutely. We are pumped for this. So basically how we're going to break it down is because no game is created equal. We are ranking these into tiers. So obviously you've got your S tier is the best, and then A, B, so on, all the way down to F. And we're going to work our way up from the ground up. So we'll start with the worst games we've been to and end with the cherry on top S tier games.
Yes. So make sure you stick around for this entire one. And actually, before we get into this, I want to make a mention, and this is not sponsored, by the way, but download the Memento app, Memento. Memento. It is the best way to keep track of sporting events that you have attended, and it's essentially just sporting event Instagram. You can go and you can input games that you've attended, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, hockey, anything, and it essentially just keeps a log of every single game that you've ever attended. I was actually using it a lot when I was preparing for this episode. And it also keeps track of the records of specific teams that you have seen in person. So like, for instance, the Steelers are 4-2 in games that I have attended. And the Memento app keeps track of that as it goes along. So just as a little aside, this is, again, not sponsored, but it's definitely something that I would recommend to anybody. So make sure you get the Memento app. And hey, if you want to find me and David on there, be our friends. It'll be a good time. And, we can see the games that you guys have been to as well, because I'm sure several Steelers fans that are listening to this have been to some pretty awesome games. But why don't we kick this thing off with the worst of the worst, the games that we absolutely loathe and despise. I will volunteer myself to go first because mine is very recent. The worst Steelers game that I have been to out of the 6 that I have attended was undoubtedly the Bills game from this year, which was week 13 of the 2025 season, a 26-7 loss. It was just never, the crazy thing is, again, the Steelers were winning at halftime of that game. And then the second half was just absolutely abysmal. It was freezing. It was like I had to be somewhere the next day. So I stayed up late for this. I paid money for this early in that morning. And it was just miserable. And it's definitely again, this is the most recent game that I've been to, but it's also by far the worst, without a doubt.
Oh my gosh. You take the cake with that, because that game, it was historic. You witnessed history.
I did. Some very terrible history as well. And again, even just looking back at it, all the rushing yards that they had was just unbelievable. So that one is by far the worst one that I've been to. And again, if you want to listen to that episode, that was probably one of our better episodes of this year. So go back and listen to that Bills episode if you're so inclined. But do you have any in the F tier?
I have 2 in the F tier, starting both in 2018, believe it or not. We have week 17 against the Bengals. This was a home game. We were playing, we needed to win, and then we also needed the Browns to beat the Ravens to win the division, get into the playoffs. I went with my sister and then 2 family friends, and it honestly wasn't too cold, but it was such a bad game. We looked so bad. This was also the game that Antonio Brown decided not to come to, and that kind of, sparked the trade and everything. There's only 2 plays I remember. One, Big Ben thought there was a free play, somebody jumped off sides, which they did, and so he threw a crazy ball, it got picked, and they took it back for a touchdown. And then Juju scored finally to give us the lead. I think the score was either 17-10 or 13-10. So the game was very boring. And then to top it all off, they put on the big screen the Browns-Ravens game. And I was thinking, last year the Bengals beat the Ravens to let the Bills get into the playoffs. This is going to happen. And Baker throws an interception to C.J. Mosley over the middle of the field. And it was fantastic. So that was really bad. And then almost just as bad was week 1 of the 2018 2018 season. I bookended that season. It was in Cleveland, so that's all you really need to say. Me and my dad went. It was pouring rain, and Big Ben had 5 interceptions, or no, 5 turnovers. I don't know if they were all interceptions. And Chris Boswell missed, I think, maybe 2 kicks. And it was horrible. We ended up with a tie that got us out of the playoffs, basically. And the only good thing about that game was after we had missed a field goal and Big Ben got hit as he threw it, intercepted, and the Browns had the ball at like their own 15-yard line. My dad was like, "Let's get out of here." We're walking away out of the stadium, and all we hear is a collective, "Oh!" Like all the Browns fans, like they missed the chip shot field goal to win the game, and we tied. But still, horrible game.
I can't. I'll never forget when you told me for the first time that you were at that game and like what happened as you as your dad were walking out. That was just unbelievable. And again, I can't believe that you were at the both ends of that season. That's
Yeah.
incredible to me.
Yeah, no, it's pretty interesting to think about, like, because that season is a roller coaster in and of itself. So much happened, and we were riding high and then riding low, and then almost in, almost out. And I went to but they might have been the 2 worst games of the season, which is funny enough to think about, even though one of them was a win.
Yeah, that's true. That's unbelievable. All right. Well, do you have anything in the D tier? Because I think that's it for our F tier.
I do have one. I feel kind of bad about it. It was 2021, and it was the home game against the Titans because, Big Ben, Hines Ward gives some high competition, but Big Ben will always be my favorite Steeler. And I was like, Dad, I know this is last year. I got to go see him. We got to go see him. And I don't think we could plan out that last home game against the Browns, but he was like, I'll get you the one right before the Titans game. So we go to that game, and again, that game was really boring. And I think the only reason, honestly, why it isn't an F is because it was Ben's last game, because Ben's consecutive passing touchdown streak was broken on that game, which was unfortunate. He did get a rushing touchdown, so I saw his last rushing touchdown. And then also our defense had like 4 turnovers, and there's specifically one that's glued to my mind of Joe Hayden, like getting an insane kind of catch right at the line of scrimmage. But other than that, it was just a really uneventful game. It was chilly. We were kind of just, it wasn't the most entertaining game. So it was a D, but the only reason it is an F because it was Ben's last game and just to be able to see him one last time.
Yeah, that's good. I don't have anything in the D tier necessarily, but
Okay.
kind of kicking off my C tier specifically is an interesting game because, again, like you said, like the Steelers actually won this game, but as far as the actual game goes, it was pretty uneventful. But there was one very interesting part of this game, and I think I've talked about it before, and I believe you've even brought this up too. It was week 15 of 2022 when the Steelers played the Panthers in Carolina. So that was actually the second Steelers game I'd ever been to. I had been to a couple of Panthers games before that, and I believe I actually went to week 1. What year did Baker play for Carolina? Was that 2022?
Was it 2022 or 20? Yeah, it would have been 2022.
Okay, because I also went to week 1, like week 1 Panthers Browns
Remember that
when Baker Mayfield was playing against the Browns, and the Browns actually made, I think, like a 54-yard field goal to win the game at the end. Like Baker had this massive comeback in that game, and then it went all for naught because the Browns actually did something competent for once, and they made a field goal. So that was the beginning of this season. So I went to 2 Panthers games that year because the Steelers came to town in week 15. And at this point, like they were pretty much out of the playoff picture. And specifically, it was an interesting game because Kenny Pickett was hurt. And so Mitch Trubisky was the quarterback for the Steelers in this game. And honestly, like it just wasn't a very eventful game. But the one really eventful thing that I'll never forget was Mitch Trubisky essentially milked the entirety of the third quarter in just one singular drive. I believe it was like a 12 or 13 minute drive. It started out like probably at like the 15 of the Steelers. And I think we like got close to a first down, and then we took like a really stupid penalty. And I want to say, I think it was Steve Sims that had like an unnecessary roughness penalty that knocked him back an extra 20 yards. And this whole game, it was just like, let's give the ball to Najee and just let him run. I've got the stats in front of me. He ran 24 times for 86 yards, which is like barely 4 yards a carry, but they just handed him the rock the entire time. And so that's how they milked the entire third quarter, which was so fun. But outside of that, there wasn't really anything that went on. The Panthers actually made it a game at the end, but the Steelers ended up winning 24-16. I went with Nathan Warden, who's, again, a big friend of ours and a season ticket holder for the Panthers. So, shout out to him and his family, they've taken me to a couple of Panthers games. But, again, it's like a C tier because it was kind of a boring game, a very uneventful game because, like, the Panthers were also out of it at that point, too. But, being with friends, that was cool. And then also just the random Mitch Trubisky, like, insane, like, drive for out of nowhere,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't even think I watched I think I watched some of that game. Something was going on, I think, and I was like, again, we were basically out of playoff contention. It was against the horrible Panthers. I was like, okay, I'm not gonna be able to watch much of this. And I just remember like you texting and being like, holy cow, we just drained the entire third quarter.
Well, that's all I have for my C tier. What do you have?
I got one game, and also it's a win, but it was just very much like I don't really remember like anything about this game. It was so generic. It was week 2 of 2017, week 2, first home game of 2017 against the Minnesota Vikings, and I remember I was super excited. I was with my dad, my hometown friend Alex, and my grandma, and I was super excited because I loved Ryan Shazier, and obviously all the players, but Ryan Shazier specifically, I remember being super excited to see. And the only play I really remember from that game is a crosser that Ben threw to Martavis Bryant for a touchdown. And the rest of the game is pretty unmemorable. We won in pretty like confident fashion. I think it was cool because the only team I love in the NFL is the Steelers. But if the Steelers ever went under for some reason, it would be the Vikings that I would go to. So I was like, that was a little bonus. And it was a bonus because looking back, the Vikings were a great team that year and went 13-3. So I was like, that was a good win. But yeah, overall, it was just a very forgetful game.
Gotcha. Is that the only one in your C tier?
Yeah, that was in the C tier, and then I have nothing in the B tier.
Really? So you just have gone to some awesome games, is what you're saying.
My first game in the A tier, I'll be honest, probably should be in the B tier at the highest, but I put it in the A tier for a couple of reasons. I'll just go right into it.
Do you want me to do? I have one B tier, actually.
Oh, you have one B tier?
I
do.
Okay,
go.
Okay, so my one B tier was week 7 of 2024. It was Russ's first game as a Steeler, the blowout win that we had against the New York Jets at Heinz Field. It was a night game. I believe it was a Sunday night game. And crazy enough, one of our very faithful listeners, Zach Hill, was also at this game just randomly. And I got to meet up with him and his stepdad, I believe, before the game. And it's so funny because, again, you think this is the New York Jets of 2024. Who was the quarterback of the New York Jets in 2024? Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, David.
Oof. I mean, yeah, you just hear that and you're like, oh man, you're just thinking about what is to come when he joins Pittsburgh.
Well, even at that point, I don't even think it was a thought in anybody's mind that he would be in Pittsburgh. And I remember before the game, Zach had some awesome seats. He was maybe 15 rows back, like just in the end zone. So he was down there. It was really good seats. And when we were down there, I was just, talking to him and his stepdad, and Rodgers comes out of the tunnel and we're just watching him warm up. And we're saying to ourselves, this dude just looks slow. Like he could not move even in warmups. And again, this is almost 2 years ago at this point. So, we had those thoughts in that moment. So you can kind of fast forward and see what our thoughts were on Rodgers coming to the Steelers when he eventually did. But I want to pick your brain a little bit here because I know that you might have this on lock. Okay. Who had 2 interceptions of Aaron Rodgers in that game?
My boy, Beanie Bishop.
Beanie Bishop. Bring him back, people. I don't know where he is. Man, bring him back. And I guess if you remember in that game too, Russ did not start good. He was actually very bad in the beginning of that game. Really turned it on at the end. And, again, it was a blowout by the time it was over. But, I got it in the B tier because, it was a pretty monumental game if you think about it in hindsight. Because Russell Wilson, that was his first game as a Steeler. That didn't last very long, but I was at his first game as a Steeler. I also got to see, Aaron Rodgers in that capacity even before he was a Steeler. So it's in the B tier. It was a close game for a while and then it wasn't. So, But otherwise, it was a decent game. Nothing like super spectacular. But those Beanie Bishop touchdown, or the almost one was almost a touchdown. But the two interceptions of Aaron Rodgers, that's what really put that one over the top.
Yeah, that was a good game, and I like you're right. Like it was close there early, and then Russ didn't play good, but we just took care of business later. And they're wearing the block numbers, which I remember, which I love it when they wear those. So yeah, going into my A tier games, I have two. My first is a 2022 game. I was coming home for the weekend for college, and I went with my mom, dad, brother, and then our family friend Super Bowl Paul. And he likes to stand on the rotunda. And so I've been there multiple times during games, and we were there for this game. It was like perfect October weather. You're wearing a sweatshirt, but you're not cold at all. And and I remember I told my dad, this is another one where I was like, Dad, I have to go to this game because it was against the 2022 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I was like, I want to see Tom Brady and I want to see us beat Tom Brady. And I was just like, we're going to beat him. That was my mentality going into it. And this was still when I was believing in Kenny Pickett and hoping the best for him. And so I was super elated when his first career passing touchdown was right into my end zone that I was standing at to Najee Harris, whose jersey I was wearing. Or no, I think I was wearing Cam Hayward's. But anyways, that was super cool. And then like Kenny Pickett getting hurt, Mitch Trubisky coming in, delivering the insane game-winning drive and the touchdown pass to Chase Claypool. Like, this sounds like a fever dream when I explain to you everything that happened in this game. Chase Claypool, Mitch Trubisky, game-winning drive, Kenny Pickett, first career passing touchdown, like Tom Brady on the Buccaneers. What the heck? And so it was just a combination of a whole bunch of things that was just so great. It was so fun to be standing. It was my brother's first Steeler game, I'm pretty sure, actually. And just, I think it's A tier simply because we beat Tom Brady and I got to see it the last time we played him.
That's so sick. And I'm looking at this now, and it's so funny that that's the game that you have to start off your A tier, because the previous home game that the Steelers played, they had one game in between where they were on the road. I went to the previous home game that the Steelers played as my first ever Steelers game, and I'll actually talk about it now because this is also in my A tier. You're talking about Kenny Pickett beating Tom Brady. I was the one that was at Kenny Pickett's debut. And again, you put this into perspective. I was at Russell Wilson's Steelers debut against the Jets. And I was also at Kenny Pickett's Steelers debut in week 4 of 2022 against the Jets.
Crazy.
It was my first ever Steelers game. First ever game at Heinz Field, and the Steelers lost 24-20. Who was the quarterback for the New York Jets at that point?
Zach Wilson.
Zach Wilson. I saw him absolutely dice us apart in the fourth quarter. And the thing about this game, too, is, at this point, Mitch Trubisky, he was under fire. Everybody was like, all right, get this guy out of here. We want to see what Kenny Pickett can do. And I'm sure that you especially were like, dude, let's go. Let's figure this out. We want to know what we have in Kenny Pickett.
Yeah.
They get booed off of the field coming out at halftime. They were down 10-6. Offense couldn't do anything. Mitch Trubisky looked terrible. And then out of the huddle coming out of halftime, just the roar of the stadium when Kenny Pickett comes under center, everybody was looking at it. They see the number 8 come out there. Everybody went absolutely ballistic. And again, this is my first Steelers game. So this is really setting the tone for me. And the thing about it is he completed every single pass in that game. Problem is, the 3 of them were to the Jets. So that was one thing. And also, one of those interceptions was Chase Claypool getting mossed by this 5'9", 5'10" cornerback. And I'm pretty sure if I had to go back and look at it, I don't think I would attribute any 3 of Pickett's interceptions to himself. I think they were either all on his wide receivers, or I want to say that all of them were on the wide receivers, if I had to guess, if you remember that too.
I think so. I do remember because the first drive he was in, it was the deep ball to Claypool, where Claypool just he just had horrible awareness of when to jump and when not to. And so that one I put on Claypool. And I do remember another one I feel like was batted or dropped. And then I don't remember the third, but I don't remember being upset. But he did have 2 rushing touchdowns in that game.
He did. And the one was right in our end zone too. We sitting up in the what do you call it? The far end zone where what do you call that?
The
The
bleachers?
bleachers, the bleachers.
Yeah.
I can't believe I couldn't figure out that word. So we were on that side, and that was super cool. And also another interesting nugget about this game, and I'm pretty sure this hasn't been topped yet. Chris Boswell broke the Heinz Field record for field goal distance. He hit a 59-yarder to end the
No
first half in
way.
that game, just like completely out of nowhere. Like it was just so like unseeming. You got a crazy face. What are you thinking?
I remember that. Like I remember that distinctly. And who were you with? Zach and Joe?
I was with Zach, Joe, and Nathan at that game. Yes.
Okay, because I remember, like in our group chat, our Steelers group chat, texting like, "You guys just witnessed history," because it was Boswell. Holy cow! I completely forgot that happened.
Yeah, that game was pretty amazing. And again, it really set the tone for Steelers games for me. And again, they lost. And again, I'm 4-2 in Steelers games that I've been to. They lost the first one I went to, and they've lost the most recent one as of right now. But I've had a pretty decent track record going to these games. And again, this is in my A tier, but they lost, and it just kind of shows you how special it was to me, especially being with my friends in that game too.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, absolutely. And my last A tier before we get into S tier is also a loss. It was 2017, the divisional playoff game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I'll just paint a bit of a picture. Me and my dad get there. It is freezing. It is many degrees below zero. We are bundled up. Like it is so cold. We're tailgating. There's so many like just things to just remember. One, none of us were worried. We like everyone tailgating was like, oh yeah, like, we're in the playoffs. We're gonna beat the Jags. We completely forgot about how the Jags dismantled us. Like week 5 that season, and going in, I remember one of my one of my dad's friends that was there was trying to get me to take a sip of the Fireball, like whiskey, and I was like, I'm okay, I'm all good, and it was funny. And now looking back, I'm like, oh, I don't know, maybe. But anyways, we get into the game, and me and my dad are pretty high up opposite to the big screen in that end zone, kind of to the left. And it was perfect. Oh, another cool thing, Chris Hemsworth was there because he was sponsoring his war film. And I was like, holy crap, I'm in the same stadium as Thor. Like, what the heck? And then the sun comes out, and like me and my dad started taking off some of our jackets because it's not as cold because the sun's out. And we're like, this is like perfect. Like we're gonna beat the Jaguars. Then on the opening kickoff, the guy takes it back like 30 or 40 yards. They drive right down the field and score. And the entire stadium, you could just feel this uh, like what? Like, did that just happen? And then I think we don't do anything, and then they score again. And we're like, okay, on a questionable Leonard Fournette touchdown. I specifically remember my dad was I was a little bit like, I don't know, but my dad was like, that was not a touchdown. Anyways, then Ben throws an out route to Vance McDonald that gets picked off. An amazing play by Telvin Smith, not really Ben's fault. And then they score, and it's 21-0 in a blink of an eye. And the entire stadium's just like, what? Like, what? Like, we're down 21-0? Like, the game hasn't even started. And so yeah, everyone's in shock, and there's this 30-year-old Jags guy who's in the front, like the row over to us in the front, who's like chanting all this stuff, like saying all this crap. Then there's this 70-year-old Steelers fan who's wearing overalls and a college Jack Lambert jersey who gets up and starts saying stuff, and they start taking their jackets off and clothes off like they're gonna fight, and they didn't end up fighting. I think somebody stopped them, but that was just like pretty crazy to witness too. Like what this I don't know if he was 70, maybe like 60-year-old man is about to fight this 30-year-old guy, and they're taking clothes off in below zero weather. But anyways, we're just like, okay, like, is something going to happen? Is something going to happen? And then Ben just unheaves a deep one to Antonio Brown, who catches it and reels it in. An insane catch. He was being interfered with. And it was so cool, like, anytime a deep route happened, because this was when A.J. Boye and Jalen Ramsey were at the peak of their cornerback career. Well, not Jalen Ramsey, but A.J. Boye for sure. And so we're like, okay, like, there's life. But we couldn't really stop the Jags. But we kept scoring. Like, we scored again, and then right before half, right in me and my dad's end zone, Martavis Bryant hauled in a deep pass by Ben, and it's like, okay, maybe it's 21-14 at halftime, and then we go down and score, and then the Jags score. But then there was a period of time where we actually stopped the Jags two times, and it was like, okay, like, we're only down one score both of these times. We can tie the game. And it was like, if we tie the game, we're okay. The first time, I don't remember what happens. The second time, yeah, it was brutal. No. I do remember what happened. The first time, it was a fourth down and like 1 or 2, and we pitched it to Le'Veon Bell to the short side of the field. Horrible play call. The next time, it's also like a 4th and 5, maybe a 4th and 2, and we do a play action where we throw it on a crosser to Eli Rogers, who he was so unbelievably interfered with, and they didn't call anything. It was insane. And so that kind of really set us back. But there was still some cool moments. Le'Veon Bell had an insane wheel route touchdown catch against Telvin Smith in our end zone. And so, like, so many moments that's like, these are amazing moments that I will never forget. And yet, our defense couldn't stop a breeze, and it was just devastating. And another reason why it's an A tier is because right when we got home, and like, I'm not even joking, we get home, I sit down, my family, my mom, they have the other playoff game going on. I sit down in my seat, take a drink, and look over. And little do I know, Stephon Diggs is catching a ball at the sideline, and the Saints tackler misses, and he goes in and scores. And I'm like, what did I do? Did that what? Like, we got home right when the Minneapolis Miracle was taking place. So, like, everything about it was great, except for the fact that our defense couldn't stop the Blake Bortles run Jags, and we lost the playoff game.
Unbelievable. Bravo storytelling. That was awesome. I mean, and that's the whole thing about that game is like, they really had no business losing except for the fact that their defense was just so incompetent for just whatever reason in that specific game.
Yeah. It literally, and I think this is what it was Ryan Shazier. I think that Ryan Shazier was the head and the middle of this defense, and obviously the tragedy that happened against the Bengals that year. I don't think our defense was ever the same. Sam Spence was the guy who replaced him, who I think we signed maybe off waivers, or he was on our practice squad, and like, he just couldn't fill the role, and I think that we crumbled without him. And interestingly enough, every single playoff game that we won in Ryan Shazier's career, Ryan Shazier had a turnover, which is just insane.
Wow. What a stat. Good pulls.
Yeah.
Do you have any others in your A tier?
I don't. The last 3 are S tier.
I'm a little jealous. I'm going to be honest. The fact that you've got 3 games in your S tier is kind of crazy. Well, I've got one more in my A tier. This is the only tier I have 2 games in, and it is a more recent game. I mean, I've only been to Steelers games in the last, in the 2020s. You've preceded me in some Steelers games, so I'm kind of catching up to you here. But my second best game that I've been to in my A tier was Week 10 of 2024. So again, just last year, I guess 2 years ago at this point, it was the 28-27 victory on the road in Washington against the Commanders. One of the just wildest games that you could ever imagine. And I want to make a shout out here. And I did it when we had that episode originally. But again, big thank you to Papa Joe Kersey for taking myself and Joe to that game, because that was just such a fun time. I mean, it was a new stadium for me. I love exploring new stadiums, and I love just being in new environments. And I'll tell you what, that game I'll never forget for many reasons, but one of the reasons was just how many Steelers fans were there. It was just packed to the brim with black and gold. And the other reason I'll never forget that game, and had nothing to do with the actual game itself, there was a gentleman that sat right next to me on my left. Probably, 55, 60 years old, African-American guy, like just diehard Commanders, diehard Redskins. He had all his Redskin stuff on. And I'll tell you what, the entire game, the only thing that he said was, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. And he would pound his seat the entire game. And I'm sitting right next to him. It's right in my ear the entire time. And it's funny because, again, you figure this is like the Jaden Daniels led Commanders. It's like, okay, we want to do some stuff through the air. Austin Eckler had a heck of a game that game. And sure enough, they did run the ball. But it was funny because whenever they didn't run the ball, he would just get louder and louder and louder. And then anytime that anything wrong happened with the Steelers, I'm sure you remember this, Russ threw up this just prayer to George Pickens, and it was essentially just an arm punt. And it got intercepted, and I don't think it was the safety that intercepted it. And Pickens just starts laying into the cornerback that was on him, and he's just fighting him behind the play. It was just it was just absolutely ridiculous. And Pickens actually had a really insane touchdown catch in that game, like to start the game too.
Yeah.
But in that moment, like when anything wrong happened with the Steelers, he would say, "Uh-oh, uh-oh," and then he'd go back to yelling, "Run the ball! Run the ball! Run the ball!" the entire game. So I know Joseph, he'll never forget that too. And I will certainly never forget it because I think my ears are still ringing. But the big moment in that game specifically, and this was right in our end zone, the Steelers get the ball back with just enough time left. The Zane Gonzalez, which shout out to all the Zanes out there, Zane Gonzalez had just kicked a field goal to go up 6. And then Russ goes down, and the Mike Williams touchdown catch to take the lead in our end zone. And like, again, this is like the only catch that Mike Williams made in his entire Steelers tenure. And me and Joseph are just going absolutely insane because we're like, oh my gosh, it's Mike Williams. We did something with him. And sure, this was pretty early on in his tenure. And so you have to figure, what were the Steelers? They were 7-2 after this. We're thinking visions of grandeur. And then a couple of things happen here and there. The Browns game happens. They beat the Bengals. And then it's just after that, it all goes to pot. So it was like, I was at kind of like the last encouraging game that the Steelers really had in 2024. And it's so insane to think about that, just how hard they fell off after that game. But that game specifically, and again, the Commanders were 7-2 coming into that game. So like you kind of said with that Vikings game, this was a massive win for us. And again, we're thinking all the best things. We're like, oh my gosh, we're going to the Super Bowl. We're driving on the transit back to Joseph's sister's house, and we're like, we're going to the Super Bowl. I don't see how we're not going to the Super Bowl. And, history will tell you that we did not go to the Super Bowl. But that's the second best game I've ever been to. Super awesome game.
Yeah. Yeah, that was an amazing game. And so many just epic moments. We'll definitely, next time we play Washington, have to get that guy on the outside perspective.
Yes, absolutely. Most definitely.
Yeah. All right. So I've got 3 S-tier games. Do you want to do, how many S-tier games do you have?
I have 1. And I don't know, okay. I don't know what yours are. I have a feeling that they're pretty, how do you want to do this?
I was thinking I could do 2, and then you do 1, and then I close off with my favorite.
Oh, let's do that. I like that.
Okay. So starting us off, both these games, these 2 that I'm going to talk about, are actually from 2019. So 2019, I think it was week 5. We had a rough start because Ben was hurt, and I think we were 1-3 at the time, maybe 2-3. We were playing the Baltimore Ravens, who were 2-1 or 3-1. And obviously 2019 was like Lamar's year. And so we go into this game. I'm there with my dad, my good friend, and then my FCA leader, which was pretty fun. And this game was so crazy. I'm trying to think back of some of the plays that were insane. But one, Lamar Jackson, this was his MVP year, but we shut him down. We were all over him. He didn't do that much. He had at least 1 interception, I remember, which was so awesome. And of course, like before I say anything else, it's Ravens Steelers in Pittsburgh. Like I was loving every second of this. It was an extremely close game. We are going back and forth, and I'll never forget. It was the Steelers were going away from us, but they were close to us, like at our 25 or 30, and Mason Rudolph gets out of the pocket, slings the ball to James Washington. If you remember James Washington, love that guy. And he gets 25 yards, 30 yards. And we're like, oh, let's go. And then we see some flags fly over by Mason, and we're like, oh, he's on the ground. And they show the replay. Earl Thomas was on the Ravens this time. Absolutely knocked him out cold. You could see his fingers were all closed up and stuff. And it was insane. And crazy enough too, the cart broke down. So he had to walk off the field. And so it was oh my gosh, what the heck? And then this was the first you'd ever heard the name Delvin Duck Hodges. He walks onto the field. What the heck are we going to get? I'll tell you what we're going to get. A guy who leads us to overtime against the 14-2 Baltimore Ravens. And I specifically remember early on in that game, Duck Hodges threw a crosser route to Juju, who made the catch, stiff-armed Marlon Humphreys down, and walked in for a touchdown. That I only mention that because that becomes very important later on. The And yeah, so we go to overtime, and that's insane enough. I'm thinking like, man, like we're playing this is Ravens Steelers, and I get to see overtime, my first overtime game. The Ravens get the ball first, we deferred, and we stop them. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we're gonna win. Like this is it. Like the stadium is so unbelievably excited. And lo and behold, that same crosser route comes back again, and we throw it, and it's complete. And Marlon Humphreys is like, I know this one, and punches the ball right out of Juju's hands after he catches it, and the Ravens recover. And that was like, oh, like you've got to be kidding me. They have it just outside of field goal range, so it's like, okay, maybe there's still a chance. And that was just, it was an amazing game, but it took all the heart right out of the stadium, but they didn't gain many yards. So they line up for a field goal, and it's Justin Tucker. So my dad's like, let's start walking down. We're all the way in the top of the stadium, and let's start walking down. And I'm just like, hold on, hold on, hold on. Like, let's watch this ball. And I am still to this day not convinced that it was good. It was going up, and it was going to the right, going to the right, going to the right. And I think it like just had enough that, like, the rule that if it's like right above the pole, like if it's right in line with the pole, it's still good. That's basically what happened. But like in the moment, I was like, that might have been outside. I was like, come on, like let's look at this thing. And so it was just an insane game, and so many things happened, and it was just Ravens Steelers. And even though we lost, it was really cool to see. TJ Watt had a really good game. And then my second S tier game, this was probably the best off of memory that I have, because it was also 2019. I think we were 4-4 or 3-4. The Colts were 3-4. It was in Heinz Field. I was standing in the rotunda the whole time with my best friend Alex again, my dad at Super Bowl Paul. And this game was just insane. It was all over the place. Bud Dupree had the game of his life. Oh my gosh, I'll never forget it. He had a couple sacks, forced fumble recovered. But Minka Fitzpatrick made a name for himself right when we traded for him in San Francisco. But he had a 96-yard, I think, pick six against Brian Hoyer. And I remember I saw it. There was a play before that where I think the Colts settled for a field goal where it was almost the exact same play. And I was like, oh man, like if they had thrown that, Minka would have jumped it. Then later, it's like in our end zone, and he jumps it, takes it all the way. And I was like, I love you forever, Minka Fitzpatrick. You're the best. And Mason Rudolph was back, had some good plays, but what I remember specifically is it was 26-24. We were winning, and the Colts got the ball back with very little time, and they're like going to my direction, and it's like a 30-yard field goal, and there's not time left. We knew we weren't going to do anything offensively if they make this field goal, and we're all just like, well, here we go. It's Adam Vinatieri. He's going to make this thing, and then we're going to lose. An unbelievable game. And we're just waiting, we're just waiting, we're just waiting. He kicks it and shanked. It goes completely to the left. That was the loudest I've ever heard Heinz Field. We were jumping up and down. I was hugging my best friend. We were hugging all over the place. Like, I'd never been more elated at a game. And it was so insane because, like, it's Adam Vinatieri. It's like he's going to make it. He's going to make it, game over. But he shanks it. And you look at the replay, it's because the laces were facing him. And it was just... Oh, it was just amazing. And it was such an amazing game, so entertaining the whole time, and just the best ending ever.
I remember you talking about that specific game, and I don't remember all those. Like, it's fun to recall all those things that led up to that, because I know you've talked about like the Vinatieri moments, but all the things that led up to that too. It's like that's like such an amazing game. And so which rotunda are you talking about? Is this like the one on the open end or on the short end?
The open net, right next to the big scoreboard.
Okay, I gotcha. I would love to watch a game from there if I had the choice.
It's honestly the best. Like, it is, if you can get like right on there, you're either right above or right below Yinzer Mob. And it's just perfect. It's just the best way to watch a game.
Now, did you have like standing room only seats for that game or something?
No, we had Super Bowl Paul has season tickets, and so, or when my dad also has other friend who has season tickets, so he'll normally get it off of them. But the season tickets are like the very top row of like the one section for my dad's friend, and so like when we get those, sometimes he'll be like, "We're just gonna go stand with Super Bowl Paul," and because he'll get there as early as he can to save some space, and it's just so awesome.
That's super sick. That's definitely a bucket list for me to watch a game from the rotunda. So I'll have to make that happen at some point.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Right before you get into it, I'm not going to say anything, but I know what your number one is, and I can't wait to hear you talk about it.
Oh my gosh. My S tier game, the best Steelers game that I've ever attended, And it probably won't be topped unless I go to a playoff win or something. I don't know. This game probably won't be topped for a very long time. Week 2 of 2023, the Pittsburgh Steelers on Monday Night Football against the Cleveland Browns. I was with Nathan, Joseph, and Logan. It was the first time that the 4 of us had taken a Pittsburgh trip. And the funny thing about this, too, the next morning, I had a presentation at Liberty at like 9 in the morning.
Oh my gosh.
And again, Pittsburgh is 6 hours from Liberty University, which is in Lynchburg, Virginia. We went to this game. It took forever. This game was a long game, like 3.5 hours. We get out of the game. We get to our car. I mean, we parked probably a mile and a half away, and I drove straight through the night on nothing but prayers and a 5-hour energy, went to my presentation, and then slept the entire rest of the day. It was just like, it was an unbelievable turnaround, absolute fever dream. But it was a fever dream from the moment the game started, because the first play of the game, Deshaun Watson throws a pick 6 to Alex Highsmith. We had barely gotten into our seats, and this just happens the moment the game starts, and we are going absolutely insane. And again, the tone was set when I went to my first Steelers game when they played the Jets. But you can't imagine just how ballistic the stadium went when Alex Highsmith picked that off and went the other way. It was unbelievable. And then from there, it was like nothing happened. Like the offense couldn't do anything in this game. Kenny Pickett was not good. Nobody else was good. Boz kicked a 50-yarder. And then towards the end of the second half, just randomly, we hadn't done anything with the ball all game. The 71-yard touchdown to George Pickens towards our end zone. And again, it was just such a simple route. There was nothing to it. He just kind of had this little slant, and he just outran everybody. And he took it to the house, 71 yards. The Steelers take a 16-11 lead. And it's like, oh my goodness, like this is absolutely insane. And so again, there wasn't a whole lot to cheer about in between. So we get the absolute insanity with the pick 6 to start the game. And then that moment with nothing else to cheer about, that was probably the second craziest moment. But in between that, do you remember in that game when Gunnar Olszewski toe-tapped a kickoff at like the 2-yard line? Do you remember that?
I remember like, I think there was like an open dorm or something going on, because like I had the game on the whole time, but there was always like something going on, and I literally missed that moment. But I remember like wondering why we were at the 2-yard line and just seeing everybody's text, and I was like, what like that? Oh, he just made so, like, every time we saw him on the field, it was like, what, like, are you hired by the Patriots to make us lose?
Literally. I mean, that's a moment I'll never forget, an absolute gaffe. And that's just one that, like, me and Logan and Nathan and Joseph, we talk about that all the time, that we witnessed Gunnar Olszewski toe tap a kickoff. Like, you know, it's just unbelievable. And then, funny enough, so again, I'm prepared to have to drive like through the night to get home. And so I said, okay, not a whole lot's going on right now. You know, the Browns had the ball, and I'm like, okay, I have to get some food, because if I don't have any food in me, then I'm just simply not going to go. We're not going to make it home. And I missed TJ Watt breaking the all-time Steelers sack record because I had to go get some chicken nuggets.
I literally was just about to say, like, how cool is it that you got to see that? And, man. Because, yeah, I mean, there's you got 4 huge moments in that game, and that's so cool. But hey, you were still there, and I mean, were you able to see it on the TVs that they had?
Yeah, I could see it. Like, I witnessed it, and I forget who was with me. I don't know if it was. I think it was Joseph that went with me to get food, and Nathan and Logan stayed back and they watched it with their own 2 eyes, and they have still not let me live that down. So that was something.
That's hilarious. The 2 non-Steeler fans are the ones that got to see it with their own eyes.
I know. It was just unbelievable. But again, with the way the game went later on, the Browns end up taking the lead. The Steelers still can't do anything on offense. And it's just like, what are we doing? Like, we're really going to lose to the Browns, who also aren't really doing anything either. And then with 7 minutes left in the game, they're backed up towards the end zone that we're at, like near the bleachers. Alex Highsmith comes on from the right side of the line, bats the ball out of Deshaun Watson's hands. TJ Watt picks it up towards our end zone, scoop and score touchdown. We take the lead. It's the game-winning touchdown, the second defensive touchdown of the game. And it was just unbelievable. And again, you can't match the moment when the pick six happened to start the game. Somehow it absolutely did in that moment there. Cause I mean, I've never heard a stadium so loud in my entire life.
Yeah, and you don't get two of those moments in a game. Like that's a once in a game type thing. And it was just that was so insane both times. And it's funny you mentioned like you were just getting into your seats with the pick six. I was just turning it on and like saw 6-0 and I was like what like what? And then with the TJ Watt, it's like both of those moments are game altering plays and there was both of them in one game. It was just so amazing.
Unbelievable stuff. And again, like, full circle moment. I mean, I've been a Steelers fan since 2008, 2007. I've been a Steelers fan for a long time. This was like the second game I'd ever been to at Heinz Field just because I didn't really have the resources. I lived in North Carolina for most of my childhood and most of my life. And it's like, okay, this is finally the opportunity I get to be in Pittsburgh when it's football season. And of course, like it's this game that I went to that I'll hold on to forever. And again, just being with friends for that game. I mean, I've gone to a lot of sporting events by myself and I like doing that, but there's nothing like having those moments that you share with other people. And again, that's just a game and a moment and just a night and like a 48-hour period that I'll literally never forget.
Yeah. Yeah. So amazing. Such an amazing game. I mean, like, that's a game that, like, even me watching it on the TV, like, I'll never forget. And I'll be like, that was one of the best games, like, I've watched. So, yeah, it's so cool you were at that one. Um, all right. To top it out, we're going to go to my very first game, 2014. I was so excited. I was back on the rotunda with my dad and Super Bowl Paul, and I was wearing a Troy Polamalu jersey. I think this was his last year with us. Um, we were we were wearing our Bumblebee Jailbird jerseys against the Indianapolis Colts. And once again, my dad was always so kind because at the time, obviously, he didn't surpass the Steelers, but I loved Andrew Luck. Like I thought Andrew Luck was super cool. So we get to see Andrew Luck and the Steelers, and I'm so excited. I'm like, oh, I can't wait. And all I remember from the game is a couple touchdown passes to Antonio Brown, a big deep touchdown pass, and like getting some great food. And the biggest moment I remember, because I don't remember a ton from the game because I was pretty young, but the biggest moment is Super Bowl Paul. We're up. It was a close game for like the first quarter, maybe some of the second quarter, and then our offense just bulldozed them, and our defense just kind of stiffened up towards the end. But Super Bowl Paul's like, all right, what's gonna happen? Like, we just scored a touchdown. He's like, what's gonna happen defensively? Like, what do you call it? What do you call it, Trey? And I was like, it's gonna be a pick six. Willie Gay is gonna get a pick six. And he goes, okay, you called it, you called it. And coming back, our end zone, that very drive, Willie Gay picks it off and takes it back. And I was like, what? Like, it was like the crowd was going crazy, but we were going extra crazy because it was like, I just called that. Are you kidding me? And that was like the best moment of my life. Like, I was like, that was just so insane that like I actually called that and it actually happened. Um, and then, so like on top of all of that, that's why it's in the S tier. But the biggest reason it's in the S tier is because it has aged unbelievably well. Because I'm pretty deep into Steeler, I guess you could call it lore now. Like I love just looking into. I love history. I love sports history. I love Steelers history. I was looking into it. This was the first of two games where Big Ben threw 6 touchdown passes, which is historic. No one's ever thrown 12 touchdown passes in 2 games combined. So I'm like, oh, eyewitness history. Then the the NFL Throwback YouTube channel, official NFL, released the top 25 performances of the decade. Lo and behold, Ben Roethlisberger was on that, top 25, and he was pretty decently high up there, and it was that game. And I was like, I was there for that game. And I finally was like, let me do some digging. He had one of the best quarterback performances of all time in that game. He had I think he had less incompletions than touchdowns. He had 6 touchdowns. I think he had 522 yards exactly. I think that he had a perfect passer rating. Antonio Brown had 2 touchdowns. Marcus Wheaton had one. Martavis Bryant had one. Heath Miller ended up getting the last one. I forget someone else. Maybe it was Matt Spaeth who had the other one. I don't really remember. Or man, I don't remember who got the last one. But he played a perfect game, and like Big Ben being my favorite player, I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, I didn't know it at the time, but I got to witness his best day. Like Ben Roethlisberger, our first ballot, likely, but our first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the best quarterbacks of his generation, two-time Super Bowl champion. I got to witness his best day live. Like it's just, I don't know. Again, like you said, unless it's a AFC Championship like playoff win or a playoff win that leads to a Super Bowl, I don't know how that could ever be topped. It was just, it's so amazing. Like the moment I was there, that moment with the Willie Gay, and like the whole thing was so amazing. And then just looking back on it, it just ages better and better.
That's so unbelievable that you literally called the pick six and the player, and they're coming back towards your end zone. And again, on top of that, again, like you said, just the history of Big Ben, of every game that he's ever played. I mean, you got to figure he's one of the most durable quarterbacks to ever play the game. And you were at the one that he was at his best. That's unbelievable.
It was insane. And I have to give some credit. It wasn't totally random. I picked Willie Gay. I would watch on loop the 2008 Super Bowl video. And it was in that video, there's a huge deal when we beat the Ravens the second time to clinch the division. Willie Gay has an interception that seals it. And like they just spent a huge time on that. So I'm sure my mind was like, Willie Gay, interception. All right, pick six. And so yeah, it's just it's an unbelievable blessing that was my first game, and then I got to see what I like, the Killer Bees at their best, Ben at his best. It was just so awesome.
Well, I think looking back at this episode, we've kind of determined that we've been to more awesome games than we've been to stinkers, which again, with our situations, I mean, I've never lived in Pittsburgh proper. And I didn't start going to Steelers games until just a couple of years ago. And we've had some pretty terrible games in the last couple of years, but somehow I've found ways to go to the really good ones. And even you got a longer history, but even just the games that you've somehow been able to go to in that history, I mean, we're pretty blessed as Steelers fans for our in-person viewing, aren't we?
Oh, we definitely are. It's such a huge blessing that you can pick so many games, and I always get that. And like especially the past couple years, I've been so nervous to pick a game because I'm like, oh, okay, this could be really bad. And the fact that we have ended up to go to some of the ones that we've gone to, it's just the best. It's just so amazing we've got to see those moments live because you know what? No matter how good the TV gets, nothing beats seeing some of that stuff live.
Especially in Pittsburgh. And I think that
Yeah.
I finally came to this realization. I think especially at that Browns game, it's like, why would I ever not want to actually go to a game and see it in person, to be with Steeler Nation, to be with just the entire city of Pittsburgh, to be in with the terrible towels, to sing the Steelers polka, to do all this stuff at the games. Like you can't knock it until you try it. And if you haven't tried it yet, if you're listening to us, you got to go to a game because there's just absolutely nothing like it.
I mean, yeah, I absolutely agree. Even like the Pittsburgh fans are just the best. Like this Penguins game I went to where we got the shootout win and Crosby, passed the record for most assists,
Most points. Well, you were
points.
You were
Yeah.
both. Yeah.
Yeah, true. The most points, like it's just like the energy in that stadium when he got that record, and like everyone was just like, oh man, like I looked at the person I didn't know next to me, and I'm like, we're best friends right now. Like this is just awesome, and it's just like, yeah, you can't miss that. Like there's just you know, there's toxic fan groups, and I get that people don't like Steelers fans because we're loud and we show up, but man, like we're the best. And it's just, I couldn't be more thankful that this is the fan base that I'm a part of in football, in hockey, and one day baseball, because one day we're going to have something to cheer about. I'm telling you.
Hopefully, hey, I'm not going to say anything yet, but maybe this year might be one of those years that we can actually pack out PNC Park and really enjoy ourselves. But,
yeah,
you hit it on the hammer. I mean, it's an unbelievable fan base. It's an unbelievable city. And again, if you're listening to us and you're a Steelers fan, you got to go to a game. And I know that we have some international appeal. We've got people all over the world that are listening to us. So if you're listening to us in a different country, find a way to get to Pittsburgh, find a way to go to Heinz Field, find a way to go to a Steelers game. You will absolutely not regret it. And we can say that wholeheartedly. And with that, I've got to go here. So we appreciate you all listening to this episode. And I will forecast another episode that we do have planned. David talked about he watches all these really cool documentaries and the Super Bowl videos and the Super Bowl DVDs. Well, you know what? We're going to test David. We're going to test his Steelers lore. We're going to test his memory, and we're going to quiz him on some Steelers trivia here in the next couple of weeks. So make sure you tune into that one. we've got some news coming up, I'm sure, that we're going to start talking about as far as the offseason goes, so keep an eye out for that as well. But as far as this episode, this was really fun to just record and to reminisce on the memories that we have as Steelers fans, the people that we got to go to games with, the actual games that we were at, the history that we've witnessed even in this short amount of time. I mean, this was just a really fun episode, and we really hope that you enjoyed listening to this one.
Yeah, absolutely. It was absolute pleasure to make, and just it's such a joy to relive those moments. And like everyone has those moments as a fan, and especially as a Steelers fan, and it literally is just the best. And yeah, I'm nervous for next episode because I know you, and I know you can pull some hard ones. So I might need to do some refreshing.
I very much believe in you. If there's anybody that I had to pick to go on Jeopardy and ace a Steelers history category, it is none other than David DeSantis III. So you can expect a good episode when that one comes out. But as far as this episode of Boardman Black and Gold, it's sponsored by Zecca Enterprises, crafting furniture solutions in northwestern Pennsylvania. Call 919-406-4679 to turn your furniture problems into furniture solutions. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of us just reliving the past and the games that we've been to. Let us know on Instagram at Boardman and Gold. What awesome games have you been to? And we're going to have plenty of guests on this offseason as far as the Steelers fandom goes. But as far as this episode, thanks so much for listening. Zane and David will be back next week.